Coming up on show 439, Tesla joins forces with someone else. Got some Jaguar I-Pace sales numbers and the Czech car that's electric. Well, good morning, good afternoon or good evening. In fact, wherever you are in the world, welcome to EV News Daily, Wednesday the 10th of April today. My name is Martyn Lee. I've been through every EV story I can find in the last 24 hours, and I'm saving you time because there's so much news out there at the moment. And don't fall off of your chair or whatever you're doing. Chances are you're driving right now or doing your routine, or maybe you're listening in the gym or something. I do appear to be publishing today's podcast on schedule, which is, when it should go out, 4 p.m. Pacific, which is 7 p.m. Eastern, which is midnight UK. I don't know what time it is down under, but it's like I try and have it out at 12:01 midnight of the day when it should be out. A little bit earlier for the US, a little bit later in Europe, Asia, but it hasn't been happening lately. I've been a bit rubbish with my schedule. Not today, though. May this be the start of something beautiful. Hello to the gang at myev.com if you haven't checked them out lately. In the USA, it is the marketplace about buying and selling and learning about EVs as well. myev.com if you're interested in buying an EV sometime this year. I know lots of people listening to this show are EV curious. If you're in that box, check them out. There's a brand new Audi TV ad out, and I think it's got a great sense of humour. It's all about people having outdated perceptions of electric cars. It's really interesting, isn't it? I saw Robert Llewellyn from Fully Charged put a video out, and he has been a long-time Toyota Prius driver, and been a big fan. I think probably his first EV, and been a big fan, and he is still a big fan of Toyota, but he put a video out to his hundreds of thousands of YouTube subscribers, really lying into Toyota, saying he personally has had enough of this TV campaign, which Toyota, this war they're waging all around the world, where they have things like TV adverts where there's EV chargers covered in cobwebs, or there's a current one where someone's driving kind of through the desert in one of their hybrids and they fly past someone who is charging their car. Like we all charge our EVs standing next to the pump with our hand on the pump as if we're pumping gas or something. Toyota really are going into all-out war with EV drivers, which is kind of ironic because the Prius plug-in's a pretty nice plug-in car, and they are going to be making electric cars in the future. All car makers will. So I don't quite know why Toyota want to make so many enemies, but it's interesting. That's their marketing department's take. And of course, the poor people, the PR people on Twitter who get it in the neck have been very gracious and always very patient when they get these complaints. But it's it's the marketing departments that are messing this up for Toyota and really ruining what is an amazing legacy of Toyota with their electrification program with the Prius. But they are intent on going down that route, and respect to them. We see differently, but respect to them. Whereas Audi have come out with this TV ad that really takes that premise of Toyota, which is poking fun, and then Audi poke fun at those outdated perceptions. Autoblog Green says that the advert is called Not For You. Electric cars? Well, they're not for you. It's a 60-second advert, and a man wakes up in the morning, he's got his robe on, his dressing gown, wearing his slippers first thing in the morning. He comes out of his house in his street to with his dog to fetch the morning paper, which is on the sidewalk, and he watches his neighbour across the road, and the garage door opens up and it reveals the brand new Audi E-Tron, and it's connected to a charger. First point of difference here: no, the owner of the E-Tron doesn't wait by their car while it charges. Then he's the man that's watching this E-Tron as he kind of blinks and imagines driving it. He gets transported around the world to a variety of scenic locations. A dusty, baking hot desert plateau that looks about 60 degrees Celsius. A snowy mountain range where his slippers get covered in snow and it's freezing cold. A rainy forest and a not-so-scenic crowded parking lot of a gas station. There's even a shot of a Formula E, the Audi Formula E car, racing with the E-Tron on a circuit. And all of this is to make the point, to counter all of those outdated perceptions about range, about the charging infrastructure, about the performance of EVs. Yes, they are all milk floats, aren't they? I'm going to play you this. I know this music from somewhere. I've heard this music before. It might even be like Is it like a Mission Impossible type music? I know when the minute you tell me, I'll remember. I presume Audi have like done a buyout of it or something. So I'm going to put the advert in here, and if I get in trouble for putting it in, I'll have to take the podcast down or something. So I'm going to play you the advert now, and you can, from what the pictures that I've painted for you, you can get the idea. This is a really, really great treatment of how to sell EVs in a mainstream TV ad. Have a listen.
I know what you're thinking. Electric. It's not for you. And you're probably right. Electric just doesn't have enough range. It will never survive the winter. Everyone knows water and electricity don't mix. No more hanging out here either. Charging stations? Good luck finding one of those. Electric just can't keep up. So, maybe an electric car isn't for you after all. Or is it?
I think it's great. It's one of a series of adverts that Audi are doing, and I love that. And I've said this before, it's not particularly clever, but also it's brilliantly clever. Rather than saying Audi's gone electric, they've got a little bit of swagger to it, a little bit of bravado, and they've flipped it around. So if you haven't seen it, Audi's tagline they're using for their advertising campaigns, electric has gone Audi. And, you know, maybe Tesla fans will be a bit like, hang on, that's a bit strong, because this is their first EV and they're not selling it in many numbers. But you know what? Have some confidence, have some swagger, come out into the market and say, you know what, we made a great car. Electric has gone Audi. And I really like that. I think it's super nice, and good luck to anyone who's eagerly awaiting their E-Tron right now. Let's go to Fiat Chrysler, FCA, Fiat Chrysler Automobile. They were potentially facing a bit of an issue here in Europe because next year the European Union are setting targets for average CO2 emissions across the fleet. So when I say fleet, I mean all the cars they sell. No, don't think fleet buyers or fleet owners like companies. Think every car that a car company sells in a year. We're calling it the fleet, right? And so much like when California sets a rule, the rest of the world has to adapt because there are so many cars sold. And just like when the European Union set a new rule, well, it does impact where if you're not listening in Europe, it will impact you because car buyers have to fall in line. And so you wouldn't make one car for Asia and one for Europe. You wouldn't make one car for the US and then a different one for Europe. So it affects everything. It raises the tide, if you like. Well, Jalopnik website says that Fiat Chrysler's collective average emissions for their fleet last year, 2018, amounted to somewhat more than what's going to be allowed in these new rules. You're allowed 95 grams of CO2 per kilometre. Fiat Chrysler are currently, they were at 123 grams per kilometre of CO2. According to the Financial Times, Fiat Chrysler have done a deal. They've done it with Tesla, and they're going to pay Tesla hundreds of millions of euros for offsetting emissions credits to avoid what actually could have been, because the fines are actually a lot more than what they're paying Tesla. The fines would have been billions, with a B, of euros when the new law becomes active the end of next year. Julia Poliskanova is the Senior Director of Transport and Environment and said this, and I quote, "For Europe, this is the first time that completely separate manufacturers have pooled their emissions together as a commercially viable compliance strategy. Once you've set up a pool, it's valid for several years." End quote. So, of course, Tesla's fleet are zero emissions, full stop. Fiat Chrysler's somewhat higher, and so I didn't realise this. You can form pools of companies, and they've done that. Fiat and Tesla have pooled their resources, except the financial resources are heading in the direction of California, and actually all of the zero emissions credits, I'll call them that, are heading in the direction of Fiat Chrysler. Engadget say it was expected that car makers would pull their own sub-brands together. VW, for instance, VW can improve their emissions with its regular brands. So they sell lots of small little cars in VW that don't have many emissions, but then they can offset a Porsche, a Lamborghini, for example, along with a deal between Mazda and Toyota. It's the first time that two wholly separate car companies have agreed to pool their emissions in Europe, and it shows the sheer pressure on all these companies out there to electrify their lineups. This sort of deal is not unusual for Tesla, though. Last year, they made $103.4 million by selling zero emissions credits in the US, and it made $279 million the year before that. Now, the EU pact could significantly increase Tesla's bottom line. What would you rather? Billions of euros in fines or hundreds of millions given to Tesla if you're Fiat Chrysler? And at some point, you have to look back, and of course, previous leadership who are sadly no longer with us, so let's not be too mean on those. But the previous leadership, you have to kind of question. There was a lot of talk over the years of poo-pooing Tesla, of dismissing electric cars, of saying, well, that's nice, this little American company that's making these little cars over here, they're nothing compared to Fiat Chrysler. And fast forward now, and they've had to, I won't say go begging, cap in hand, but they've had to maybe swallow their pride a little bit. Isn't it fascinating what's happening in the world at the moment of cars? I'm absolutely fascinated. I had a little message a couple of days ago saying, please update us on Jaguar I-Pace figures. And so we can do that right now. In March, Jaguar in the US sold 212 I-Pace models. That is actually 6% of over 6% of the total result, by the way. So last month, 3,500 Jaguars sold. About 6% of those were electric I-Paces. Sales during the first quarter, so January, February, March, were 608. Cumulatively in the US, 1,001, says Mark Kane for InsideEVs.com. But it does prompt Mark to ask the question whether the I-Pace and other new cars, like the upcoming Audi E-Tron that we referenced at the top of the show today, will be able to even start to match a company like Tesla in even the long-term future. The forum member on Inside EV's Scott F200 says this, and I quote, "Is this one of the scenarios where you can make statistics sound like whatever you want to be good or bad? To say that 6% of Jaguar's total sales were electric sounds really impressive, but when you realise it was 200 models in the whole month, it's not so good." Jaguar I-Pace, 210 in January, 186 in February, 212 in March. I don't know. I think about the number. What do you think about the number? The number seems low to me, but it's an expensive car in the US, $80,000 odd, isn't it? Maybe it's cheaper for the I-Pace. Maybe I'm thinking of the E-Tron. Fabulous car, fabulous interior. It's a Jag. It looks great from the outside. When you look at the silhouette of the I-Pace, probably my favourite looking EV in terms of the looks. If you draw the silhouette on a piece of paper, I think it's my favourite looking EV that's on the market right now. Looks fabulous, great design, great engineering. Why are they not selling more? Is it demand or is it supply? I don't know the answer. I'd love to see them selling thousands at a time. Let's talk about how many people want to buy EVs though. Poor air quality in the world's cities is being caused by traffic and construction and building, energy use for utilities like heating and hot water, as well as domestic appliances, even cleaning products cause bad air quality. In a survey of 2,000 adults, Nissan's research found that 60% of respondents were willing to buy a pure electric vehicle to benefit the environment. Only a quarter of the respondents were aware of the financial benefits. That is completely the opposite of some of the research I've seen over the years that said people are really interested in how much money they can save, and that the environmental factor was maybe third or fourth point down on the reason to buy an EV. I guess this is a subtly different question, not why did you buy an EV, because for me, environment wasn't number one. It was, so maybe this question is phrased differently, but anyway, it's interesting. So the lack of education on financial incentives is interesting, only a quarter knowing about them. 43% of the respondents said that they were more likely to make the move to electric as a result of financial incentives if they're aware of them. Big job to do here. Big job for governments, local authorities, big job for you and I as well. When you talk to people, make sure they know about the incentives available in your area, whether it's federal tax credits in the US, whether it's the £3,500 off a brand new car in the UK, and effectively a free charger for the wall of your house or your garage. There's a little bit to pay, but that grant is still going on at the moment. You haven't got to get an EV to get that. That's correct. You can have a charger in the UK, put on your wall. You don't have to have an EV waiting first. So while that grant is available, why wouldn't you do that? It's effectively free money. Okay, there's no such thing as free money, but you know what I mean by this. So we've all got a job to do to educate our friends and family and people that we meet. And, I'm trying. Every single day. Right, let's talk about two wheels here. Originally unveiled in 2013, Voxan Motors, Voxan, Voxan Motors is preparing its electric motorcycle. It's called the Wattman, W-A-T-T, Watt. Man, like Walkman, but Wattman. And it's going to take it to the Bolivian salt flats, and they're going to attempt to unseat the current electric motorcycle record. The rider they've got to make the attempt is none other than Max Biaggi, says riderpart.com today. Biaggi is going to attempt to break this standing record. Who took his name is Jim Hugerheide, took the Lightning SB220 bike up to 203.5 miles an hour. Back in 2013. Voxan and Biaggi are going to break 205 miles an hour with this attempt, and they have said that he is the most powerful, or it is, the Wattman, the most powerful electric motorcycle in the world. It's got 200 horsepower, 200 newton meters of torque with a motor that spins at 10,500 RPM. Voxan claims the bike does 0 to 100 in 5.9 seconds. Hold on tight. 5.9 seconds, 0 to 100. Holy moly. I did 3 0 to 60s last week in a brand new Tesla Model S P100D with one of my friends who had put 200 miles on the clock, and then somewhere very safe and appropriate did me 3 launches, and even up to 60. That was enough for me. Imagine doing 0 to 100 in 5.9 seconds. Wowzers. Good luck to that land speed attempt. We'll follow that on riderpart.com. Right, 2 more stories to go. We'll start with the Czech Republic, Czechoslovakia, as you may have once called it. Škoda. And yes, I am calling it Skoda, or maybe Škoda, some people want me to say. But it has the funny little upside-downy umlautey thing above the S, so I should probably say it not Skoda, but Škoda. We'll be providing 10 prototypes of the all-new Citigo e-Pilot, which is built upon the basis of the Volkswagen E-Up. It's a little car. They're going to give them to selected customers to test in the Czech Republic. The participants' experience from their use will be useful for suggestions and feedback of how Škoda can improve their EVs. Prototypes have completely different characteristics than the all-electric Citigo production model. Well, Pedro from Push EV's website, which I really like, by the way, and Pedro says that we already know the production version is going to be around €19,000 for the Škoda Citigo. It's going to have a range of 168 miles, maybe real world, maybe 140, 150, which means the battery capacity is going to double from what is in the Volkswagen E-Up. It's going to go to 37.4 kilowatt hours when compared to the car that it's being based on. The current E-Up battery pack has 204 battery cells. They're supplied by Sanyo and Panasonic. They're 25 amp hours each, and it's expected that the Volkswagen E-Up 2.0, we'll call it, or the Škoda e-Citigo, that's going to get 50 amp hour battery cells from Samsung SDI. However, since CATL, the Chinese company CATL, is also a battery supplier to the VW Group, he wouldn't count them out yet, he says. And I'll put a link to Push EVs in the show notes. Right, final story, because I've been wittering today. I've been going on a little bit. Tesla and the CEO, Elon Musk, have said there are no immediate plans to use Model 3's battery cells. They are called the 2170s. They are the cylindrical, like basically really big AA batteries if you haven't ever seen them. They use it in the Model 3, but they're different. They're a newer version than the batteries used in the S and the X. Now, we always talk about how the S and the X should be the more premium cars at Tesla. The Model 3 shouldn't get all the best tech because, well, just get a Model 3. Well, the CEO, Elon Musk, has made it clear that a refresh of the S and the X is not something that the automaker does. They iterate, you see. They don't have a new model year. They just make cars better as they can. New information supplied to Electrek suggests that Tesla is working on a new motor upgrade for the Model S and the Model X, and they are going to be coming from the Model 3, says InsideEVs.com. Currently, the S and the X don't use the same system as the Model 3. They use what's called AC induction motors. If the update happens as reported, that's going to change. While we don't have concrete evidence that Tesla's making such plans, the idea does make sense. Electrek learned from its sources that the Model 3 motor setup can be over 4% more efficient than the motors they opted to use in the S and the X. And I'll put a link to Inside EVs in the show notes. Right, question of the week this week. Thanks to myev.com, who have sent us our question of the week. Keep your comments coming in. Everyone seems to have an opinion on this. I mentioned that I saw a 250,000 mile Model S for sale here in the UK. Sadly, we don't have myev.com. It was one of those other sites. And, you know, it wasn't a lot of money. It was a lot of money, but it wasn't a lot of money. And I thought, you know what, it'd be fun to buy it just to tell the story, to like be the person who owned that car that done 250,000 miles. And I was saying to you, should I? You know, be a fun tale for the podcast. You could laugh at me when it breaks down. Well, my question this week is, would you buy a very high mileage EV? And maybe you do own one. Let me know. Email me, hello@evnewsdaily.com, or you can use Facebook and YouTube comments. Right, time for the endy bit. Thank you to 210 patrons of the podcast. What is a patron? It's somebody who funds this show. We are completely funded by Patreon. Things like, the streaming, the website, the hosting, even things like the redirects and the URLs that I have to pay for and all those kind of things. It's funny how the costs kind of add up. Like Adobe Auditions, like, was it $20 a month or something, the license for that? But you add them all together, and it was getting a bit expensive. For me on my own. So I put it onto Patreon, and so many people joined in and helped me fund this show. So thank you very much. We love spreading the word about EVs, and thank you if you are one of those people. There are 438 shows online for free. Get new ones by hitting subscribe. So if you are watching this on YouTube, I know it's unconventional, but I do get requests for it, so it's not really a video, but you can listen to the podcast audio on YouTube. It's a thing. And so you can hit that subscribe button, hit the little bell so you get new ones. If you're listening on a podcast app, if you're a conventional podcaster, well, then you can hit subscribe and get it first and free and automatically. Catch up with me on the socials by searching EV News Daily. Have a wonderful day. I'll catch you tomorrow, and I'm sure our friends at Audi would like to remind certain others there's no such thing as a self-charging hybrid.